All right, let's dive right into this explainer and tackle something pretty much every educator faces at some point, and that is the total overwhelm of translating the English language proficiency standards, the ELPs, into actual daily classroom practice for our K-5 emergent bilingual students. Seriously, if you've ever stared at that massive list of standards and thought, how on earth do I make this come alive in my lesson plans, you are absolutely in the right place. To make this super dense pedagogical info actually digestible, we're going to look at the ELP's support documents like an architectural blueprint. So, here's how we're breaking it down today. First, the blueprint of language. Second, listening, decoding the sounds. Third, speaking, finding their voice. Fourth, reading, constructing the meaning. Fifth, writing, expressing the ideas. And finally, number 6, bringing it all together.
Starting with Section 1, the blueprint of language, understanding the structure. Before we can even really explore those specific language domains, we have to understand the foundational framework this whole document is built on.
Because as a teacher, you already know that language acquisition isn't just memorizing a vocab list, right? Our source material makes it clear that it's a deeply complex, entirely interrelated process. We're talking everything from phonetics to pragmatics, and what's absolutely crucial to remember is that students across all 5 proficiency levels are constantly making mental connections back to their primary language in order to understand English.
And this right here brilliantly illustrates what actually lands on your desk. These are the Lead Forward ELS support documents. If you've ever felt like you needed a forklift to haul around your massive binders of standards, don't worry, this distills it down perfectly. Notice how they bridge the K3 and 412 grade bands. Looking at these side by side gives us a complete, continuous K5 spectrum of language development.
And here is the secret decoder ring for the whole thing, a 4-pillar anatomy. It's not just a bunch of rules. For every single standard, it outlines 4 very specific things. First, the focus ELPS. Second, exactly what the kids are doing. Third, how teachers are providing support. And fourth, the specific guiding questions you should be asking them.
It's honestly incredibly practical. So, with that cognitive framework in mind, how do we translate this master blueprint into domain number 1? Let's talk about what our students are actually hearing.
Section 2, listening, decoding the sounds, making sense of what they hear. This domain is ground zero. It's where the initial input happens. Listening requires students to distinguish sounds, recognize intonation patterns, and somehow pull out academic vocabulary from a steady stream of language. Just look at how this specific breakdown shifts the cognitive load. On one hand, the kids are actively tasked with using their prior knowledge, maybe gestures or visuals to figure out meaning. But on the flip side, you, the teacher, are explicitly modeling those sounds. You are providing highly structured opportunities to practice. You aren't just talking at them. You're engineering a space where they can actively decode what they're hearing. And as they move through those K3 and 412 bands, the ultimate goal is active listening. Our source documents heavily emphasize that students shouldn't just be passive receivers. We really want them identifying key ideas, summarizing what they heard, paraphrasing, and, this is a big one, actively asking you for clarification when they miss something. Which naturally brings us to the guiding questions column. Instead of throwing out a simple, "Does everyone understand?" which, let's be honest, usually just gets you a room full of silent nods, you use a guiding question. Asking something like, "What clues helped you understand what you heard?" directly prompts a student to analyze their own listening strategies. It basically makes their internal cognitive process visible to you.
And that's actually the perfect pivot point. Because once that language goes in, we desperately need it to come back out. Which takes us right from the input of listening to the active output of our next crucial domain.
Section 3, speaking, finding their voice, expressing ideas clearly. Now, speaking is where the magic happens, but it's also where students usually feel the most vulnerable. It requires our emergent bilinguals to apply all that newly acquired vocabulary and those increasingly complex grammatical structures in real-time interactions. I absolutely love how this highlights the reciprocal nature of the classroom. The ELP's document maps it out perfectly. You as the teacher create this safe, highly structured conversational space and explicitly scaffold the language. And then the kids step into that space. They are the ones doing the heavy lifting to narrate, describe, explain, and evaluate using that fresh content area vocabulary. So the crucial point here really is the progression.
In the early stages, sure, we're focused on having them produce sounds accurately, navigating long and short vowels, figuring out those tricky silent letters. But as they grow, we're actively guiding them to seamlessly adjust their register based on their audience, and to elaborate and justify their answers with way more specificity. And how do you get them there? You lean heavily on the guiding questions. Asking, how can you build on or respond to a classmate's idea completely transforms a standard one-way classroom response into a dynamic, collaborative academic discussion. You're literally teaching them the conversational moves of academic English. Section 4. Reading. Constructing the meaning. Decoding and understanding texts. Next up, let's look at how the ELPS document maps out the journey of deriving meaning from print. Reading in a second language is quite literally like cracking a code. As a teacher, your job is to demystify the text. So while you are up there explicitly highlighting word features, pointing out roots, prefixes, suffixes, the kids are actively taking those exact linguistic supports and applying them to decode unfamiliar words on their own. And the support documents show an incredible span of skills here. We start with navigating basic print concepts in the early grades, like reading left to right. Then we move into using context clues to decipher multiple meaning words, making deep predictions, and even navigating figurative language and idioms in the upper grades. All of this proves that reading comprehension isn't passive. It's a highly strategic operation. So when a kid gets stuck, the blueprint gives you the exact question to ask. What parts of the word help you read or understand it? By asking this, you are prompting them to become linguistic detectives. You're encouraging them to look for familiar cognates or base words to unlock the text themselves, rather than you just giving them the answer. Section 5. Writing. Expressing the ideas. Putting it on paper. This is often the most demanding domain, for sure, because it requires students to synthesize all their phonological and syntactic knowledge and independently commit it to the page. According to the Lead Forward documents, the foundational expectation here focuses really heavily on transcription. It's about having students physically apply those sound-letter relationships to represent sounds accurately. They're taking everything they've learned in listening, speaking, and reading and using it to follow conventional English spelling patterns to communicate totally original thoughts. Think of it as the ultimate test of their new linguistic blueprint, translating abstract sounds in their head into concrete symbols on the page. It's where phonology, syntax, and semantics physically lock together. Section 6. Bringing it all together. The complete picture. Okay, we've walked through all 4 domains. Let's take a step back and look at this entire architectural blueprint across the K-5 spectrum. If there is one thing I hope you take away from this explainer, it's that this document isn't just a boring list of compliance standards. It's a highly structured, incredibly practical roadmap. It perfectly balances the equation of learning, clearly outlining what you do as the educator, right alongside the specific behaviors the students have to exhibit to actually acquire the language across listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The blueprint is laid out right in front of you. The focus, the student behaviors, the teacher supports, and those amazing guiding questions are all right there. But, a blueprint is just paper until someone decides to build. What is the key to unlocking your students' potential wasn't about teaching more English, but constructing a better framework for them to use it. How are you going to use these pillars to transform your classroom tomorrow? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy teaching.